Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Harry and Jen Do Horror with Friends. On this podcast, we pick current-ish horror films to analyze, critique, and use as a springboard for conversation. This week, we're joined by author Bob Proehl to talk about Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. We talk about the metaphor of the vampire, the cost of periodic accuracy, attitudes towards teen sex, COVID, freed podcast ideas, the Keanussance, and what the hell Willem Dafoe is doing in this movie. You should know that on this podcast, we completely spoil our movies. So if you haven't seen Nosferatu yet, be sure to check it out first. If you have a minute, we welcome ratings and reviews on your podcast streaming services, particularly if you use Apple Podcasts. We could really use a few more stars and kind words to help get the show in front of people. If you don't use Apple, we'd love your help growing the show in any way you like if you have the time, including reviews, etc., or just sharing these episodes with your horror enthusiast buds. Next month, we will discuss Alien Romulus, directed by Fede Alvarez and starring Kaylee Speeney and David Johnson. Alien Romulus continues the alien odyssey when a group of young space colonists encounters the xenomorph while scavenging a derelict space station. Be on the lookout for a bonus episode also on the previous Alien films later this month. All that's to come. For now, let's talk to Bob about Nosferatu.
She's calling out to the darkness, to Nosferatu, or Locke, or whatever the fuck. Right. This, like, sexual darkness. Evil.
Sexual Darkness is a great band name. Sorry. Yeah.
That's it. That's our band.
I saw them open for I Love You, but I've chosen Darkness. I think.
I am Jen Lightfoot. I am a tattoo artist, and what is on my brain? I don't know. It snowed today, and that made me very unhappy.
So true. Because we here in upstate New York experience a season that I've come to know as Fool's Spring. It's the spring that seems like it's the spring and then it's not.
Yeah, it was last Wednesday.
Yeah, right, that's right. Yeah,
it was also known as.
It's just to be clear to everyone out there, it's usually 1 or 2 days.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not like a week.
But it's so mean.
It's
right?
so mean.
Like if it was one day, you'd be like, oh, it's a fluke day. But then like it's like, no, I'll give you 2 days.
Yes.
Yeah. It's characterized by the thought of I could forget my jacket and
Yes.
live.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I literally was like, I'm going to put away all my winter stuff.
Oh, no.
I put away half of it.
No.
But it's going to be in the 60s at the end of the week.
It is. It's Fool's Spring.
I know it is.
It's Fool's Spring.
I know. It fools me every time.
Jennifer.
It's the pyrite of seasons.
The pyrite of seasons. I love that. I'm Harry Nichols. I am a singer-songwriter. I'm an English teacher. I am a dad of 2 small humans. And let's see. Today, I did not get suckered by Fool's Spring. However, I did get suckered by feeling like maybe illness season was over. You know?
You are the parent of 2 small children. Illness season is never over.
The season's never over. That's right. And so my kids were started coughing today, and I was like, oh, God, here we go.
No.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to be talking about contagion and disease vectors, but vampires cannot hold a candle to small children.
Oh, it's definitely
attending school.
Yeah.
Children can spread much faster.
All right, friend, who are you?
Hi, I'm Bob Proehl. I'm a fiction writer, and I work in public broadcasting. And the thing that is on my mind today, I'm the parent of 2 kids of various sizes and 3 dogs of various sizes. The thing that is on my mind today, so I took my 9-year-old daughter to see Star Wars at Cinemapolis this afternoon.
Oh, were they showing?
Yeah, we could talk about that.
Okay,
later. So it was the special edition. So the first, like, a certain era of CGI, and I'm watching this, and like that doesn't kick in until like 20-30 minutes into the movie, and as soon as I saw it, I'm like, is this the beginning of enshittification of like this idea that we have now of like you take a thing that works perfectly well and you add a new piece of technology to it and it sucks. And I haven't done the mental work to think of like, is there an certainly there are earlier versions, but I'm like, this might be like the origin point.
The beginning.
To me is like the first of the like lizard things that is clearly not actually standing on sand.
Yes.
At Mos Eisley. Like this is the beginning of the end.
Oh, nothing is as bad as that scene with Jabba the Hutt.
The Jabba the Hutt scene is worse than you remember it. I don't know how long it's been since you've seen it, but I was like, wow, this does not need to be here.
The part where he quote unquote steps on the tail looks unearthly.
It repeats a chunk of script from the Greedo scene, like word for word.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did she like the movie?
There were technical issues.
Oh no!
I don't want to. Yeah, we can get into that. I don't. So I couldn't tell, and it's a long time for a 9-year-old to like sit in a theater.
Yeah.
And the whole time I'm just like, oh, she's not really digging this because the pitch was like, there's a space princess, and there's not really enough space. Like you could never have enough enough Leia in that movie, but and I was like, oh, I think this really just like didn't land for her. And then we walk out, and she's like, da 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 da.
Nice, yeah.
And we're in the car, and I had said, I've been like, it's like Leia and Han, they're getting a little flirty. And she's like, do they fall in love? I was like, yeah, it takes a couple movies. She says, how many movies are there? I'm like, 11. So we're driving back. She's like, we can watch one of those every weekend.
That's nice. That's great. Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, I showed my kids those movies too, and despite them being really not what modern movies are in terms of pacing, in terms of visual appeal, like a lot of the things, right? It inspired a lot of what modern movies are, but it's not what modern movies are now, right?
Right.
But I found that it still hooks kids. It still hooks little kids amazingly.
I mean, my understanding is this is not a Star Wars podcast. Although I don't think there are any Star Wars podcasts out there. So maybe that's a market.
This could be the world's first
I don't think anybody's
Star Wars
really
podcast.
covering that in the podcast.
That's right.
No.
Yeah. Jen loves Star Wars.
I hate Star Wars.
Really? I think that's
hate
awesome. I think that's great.
We were talking about cynicism in the previous bonus episode. I feel like this episode's going to show all my cynicism.
I'm such a... This sounds terrible. Like, I'm such a fan of people hating on the, like, wildly popular, perfectly okay thing. And I say that as someone who's like, fuck the Beatles.
Right. Wait, you're a person who's like, fuck the Beatles?
Yeah. But I don't...
Whoa.
But I'm also, like, I've mellowed and I'm older and I don't have that argument anymore. And I don't need to... I don't need that to be like my identity.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And I grew up on it, and it's like very in my DNA.
Yeah.
But I'm like, ugh.
Wow.
So whenever somebody's like, that perfectly good thing you like, fuck that. I'm like, you know what? Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
I'm with you in spirit.
You get it,
That's
man.
amazing.
That's wild. So we're not here to talk about Star Wars, though.
No.
We're not here
Or
to
the
talk
Beatles.
about the Beatles. But we
again,
are
there podcasts out there about the Beatles? Could you
probably.
guys-
Probably.
Look at that.
I don't think so.
Well, to all our listeners, here's some ideas for podcasts.
Right.
These are free. We're just throwing these out there.
Giving these away. I mean, we're here to talk about Nosferatu, though. 2024, Robert Eggers. Bob, can you summarize Nosferatu 2024 for us?
Sure. So Nicholas Hoult, Lex Luthor with hair, is sent to sort of broker a deal with an Eastern European count. That count turns out to be a little shady.
Shady.
Is
that a pun?
Yeah. Not intentional, but yeah. He has a shadowy past.
Yeah.
He discovers that his host is some sort of monster. I don't think the concept of vampire is introduced at that point. Tries to hit him with a pickaxe, which Nosferatu conveniently stores next to his coffin, like you do.
That's how I'll do.
Yeah.
I will now.
I'm going to put it in my will.
He manages to escape, but at the same time, Orlok is headed back to what is the name of the town? Weisborg?
Weisborg?
Weisborg,
I
yeah.
think it's Weisborg, yeah.
As all this is happening, he has left his wife, and she is experiencing, shall we say, hysterical episodes. I think puts it in the language that the film might use for
I would
it,
say.
of a fairly explicitly sexual nature right off the bat, and then going into full on Exorcist style acrobatics. And she's also experiencing visions or audio visitations from Orlok. He arrives back in Weisborg as a plague ship. There's rats sort of strewn all over, and then proceeds to he goes to her, kind of lays down a claim of ownership, of very sexual ownership. That you've been destined, fated for me since forever, and you have sort of 3 days. And that structures the sort of end of the film where or the last act of the film where things are increasingly going wrong. She's losing friends. Her friends are being killed off by Orlok. Nicholas Hoult comes back. He's been cleansed by nuns or something.
Yeah,
He's been cleansed
somehow. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is the possibility of breaking the link to Orlok for him, along with it's not Van Helsing, Willem Dafoe, who is a sort of, I keep thinking of him as pre-Freudian. I can't stop.
Yeah.
I
No,
can't,
you should.
I can't not think of this film in terms of Freud. And so the Willem Dafoe character becomes very this sort of, not proto, but very pre-Freud.
Yes.
And they are working to stop the monster, the Nosferatu, the vampire, and they're bad at it. And other folks die, and eventually Ellen has to physically consummate the relationship with Orlok to stop the plague and save the city, the world, what have you.
Yeah. Where do we begin with
Yeah, I
this
know.
movie? Does it
I know. What's the first thing that we should?
Jump in with?
Because I feel
We could just go all. I feel like if we begin at the beginning, we go all in.
Yeah.
Right? If we start with the scene of her calling out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which becomes hugely important.
Yeah.
It
Yes.
defines the film and, to my mind, creates the problems that the film has.
I disagree.
Oh, cool.
Ooh.
I mean,
It's also
I don't want to hop into
It's also
critique.
one of the few deviations from the original,
Yes,
right?
it is.
This scene.
Yes.
So
it is.
that's worth talking about. I mean, what?
I will just say the only thing, I will not say anything more about critique, but I wish there were more deviations.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this deviation, but I think that it was important. Not important, but I think it's okay. So you have her. She's calling out to the darkness, to Nosferatu, or Orlok, or whatever the fuck.
Right.
This sexual darkness, evil.
Sexual Darkness is a great band name. Sorry. Yeah.
That's it.
Or is that
That's
an
our
album name?
band.
I don't know,
I saw
okay.
them open for I Love You, but I've chosen Darkness. I think.
Okay, so she calls out to Orlok, and I think what do we make of that as a woman calling out to something so sexual? It's interesting. Okay, so in the 2022, Jesus Christ, the 1922, whatever the fuck movie, that one, she's a virgin? Because it kept saying without
Question
sin.
mark? Yeah.
Because they kept saying she's without sin. She has to be
Right.
without sin. So I took that as
Right. Yeah.
she's
Means,
a virgin.
yeah.
So she's completely not sexual. It's kind of a bummer. Women should be more sexual in movies and have
Agreed.
agency. Cancelled. No, but I mean having that agency, she wants it. She's showing desire. I feel
Yeah.
society is always women
Well,
shouldn't want sex.
Jen, I actually kind of disagree that she's calling out to the sex dark.
The dark sex god.
She's not calling out to the dark
But what
sex.
is she reaching out to him for?
She's calling for the angels and for protection is what she's calling for. I think that's what the dialogue is. I think that's
all right,
what she
I'm gonna look
says.
up the dialogue.
Insert clip of the film here,
Yeah.
future me.
Yeah, I had questions about that because I think there's this question for me of how old we're supposed to understand her as when she puts out that call.
Right.
I'm gonna put my sort of marker down on this.
Do it.
I feel like the message of this film is teenage horniness is a crime, and I have a problem with that.
What
because
makes you think it's a crime?
Because
not like in the movie.
My sense is from. And
I
what
heard
she
that
says-
Bob Proehl said that teenage horniness is a crime.
I would like to also just say that this is sadly how my brain works. That is a reference to Southland Tales and Sarah Michelle Gellar's role in that, where she is
nice.
she is a pop star who has a hit called "Teenage Horniness is Not a Crime."
Okay.
Anyways,
Got it.
everyone should go watch Southland Tales by Richard Kelly. It's the follow up to Donnie Darko. It's a bizarre film. Cool. So my sense, and this is from how she describes things later in the film, is that like she's this sort of like adolescent or pre-adolescent girl, and has this sort of like nebulous want that is like almost proto-sexual, and that she gets a response that is sexual and evil, and that is taken as consent for the things that happen later, and that is specific to this film in ways that like it's certainly not in the Murnau. The other film that I think of, that I keep thinking of a lot in conversation with this is Coppola's Bram Stoker Dracula, where there is again this thing of like Mina and Dracula are fated to be together.
Yes,
and it's pitched as a romance. Like Gary Oldman is kind of hot in that movie.
Right.
He is.
I can strike the kind of like
He is
when he's
hot.
not
He's
doing
hot.
when he doesn't have the bun.
when he's
thing.
like in town
once
with
he's
the
in
long
town,
hair.
right? Yeah, I'm like that is
hot.
a look.
Yeah.
And that
But the
is
fated
hot.
thing.
Like
That is in this. They say,
Definitely.
Yeah.
I forget if they use the word fate or if it's something. I feel like it's another word they use, but it's the same destiny. It's
yeah.
destiny.
Yes.
But
Also, I did get the quote from the
Okay.
opening.
Okay,
just
go
to
ahead.
quickly
All right,
do
let's
this.
verify.
Okay, Ellen says, and you guys were right and I was wrong. Come to me, a guardian angel, a spirit of comfort, spirit of any celestial sphere. That's her mistake right there.
right.
Anything, hear my
Oh,
call.
she got a celestial sphere. All right.
And then I guess he responds telepathically. So later. So she does say angel, but she says any.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it opens the door for him, I guess.
Yeah, and that I think that's also why The Exorcist is something that I like is in conversation with this movie. I mean, obviously with The Exorcist, that innocence is on display. Like she does something that Regan does something that invokes a spirit, but it's not her fault. And obviously because it's a child, that's really like apparent. But there's something weird that happens when the consequences of that are bounced into adulthood. And so like to what extent when Orlok shows up in Ellen's room, he's calling in a contract that was made, I would say, like before the age of consent.
I think
How old is she meant to be, though?
How old is she meant to be when
In the
that
movie.
happens?
Well, and just to throw in one more complicating factor, because of Eggers' relentless insistence on like periodic accuracy, like where the age of consent actually is is another question.
Yes,
right?
agreed.
Yeah. There's a lot of questions that I have with this that are like, the periodic accuracy is like how much should I give a pass to because of that?
Right.
I wanted to like this movie a lot.
I think
and I
we all
spent a good I really spent the sort of 24 hours after seeing it trying to square the circle.
Yeah.
And be like, I want to get into a place where I can just unabashedly say like, yeah, this is great. It looks cool.
Yeah.
It raises issues. It raises questions.
Yeah.
And I didn't get there, but that was one of the paths that I tried to take. And that's why when I say like, I think of the Defoe character as being pre-Freudian, I'm like, is Eggers trying to say that like, that this is sort of that what happens to Ellen is the end point of an outdated science. And I couldn't quite get there. What would have solved this is Freud.
Right. It's hard to say that.
Yeah,
too,
it's
right?
really-
It's like-
Yeah.
He just like swoops in at the end, punches Willem Dafoe, like taps out his cigar, and it's like, I got
Willem
it.
Dafoe. That is interesting. I mean, so one of the things that I feel like this movie, So we've characterized this movie as being like a really faithful adaptation to the original Nosferatu, and I do overall feel that is the case.
Yes.
But I do think that it deviates in certain ways. One of which being that opening scene, and the other of which being that I do think it reaches further into Bram Stoker's Dracula,
Yes,
to draw stuff out than the original Nosferatu really did.
Which is it's a really weird decision.
It's an odd decision, yeah.
Which part specifically?
Well, so the
Just
original
curious.
Nosferatu, 1922, as we've said in our previous bonus episode, which you should all go listen to, is that we've talked about that in terms of being sort of reflective of anti-Semitic feeling, like anti-immigrant feeling in Germany in 1922, and this movie I feel like brings in a lot of that Victorian fear of sexuality,
Yeah.
Yes.
that is really existent in Bram Stoker's Dracula,
and a
Yeah.
female sexuality,
and a female
like,
sexuality
Yeah.
in particular, right?
Like I do remember from the very first scene that not the call out scene, but like when we're introduced to Ellen and she's like, "No, stay in bed, take your shoes
Yeah.
off." I'm like, "Oh,
Right.
bad things are going to happen to her."
Right, absolutely.
Wait, does she say that to
She says
Hutter.
She says that to
Hutter?
Hutter. Yeah,
That's his name. Okay. But why is it bad for her to want sex with him?
Well, if you're looking at it in terms of the the rules of a horror film kind
No,
of
I know,
way,
but
right?
I'm thinking more like just like in real life.
well,
Because
no,
like
no, I'm not. I'm obviously not saying it's in real life, but it is another deviation from both the Murnau film and from Dracula, where the wedding has happened. So like she is not virginal,
Right.
and in fact, like she does want sex within the confines of marriage. Whereas I might be misremembering, but even in Mina and Jonathan married at the out. No, well, at least in the Coppola, they get married when he comes back.
yeah, they're like engaged.
They're
maybe?
engaged.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like we said in the last one, like Hutter and Ellen are not married in
So is it
in the Murnau.
Is it a problem that they're married?
No, I don't think.
Okay.
I just meant it was one of those
I'm like, that's great. She wants sex and
No,
she's
I-
asking for
yeah,
it.
I'm
That's
all-
great.
Yeah, why is it a problem, Bob?
This is how I get canceled. No, it's just so this is author brain coming in as like,
Yeah.
you're watching something and you're like, oh, this is here for a reason,
Right.
Like, why are you telling me about this in
Okay.
the context?
Like
The
it's meant to
mantle
be like
above
a-
the fire.
yeah, it's
the gun above
yeah,
the
it's
mantle.
it's
That story,
Chekhov.
yeah.
It was Chekhov's horniness,
Right,
and like
Chekhov's
you,
story.
Oh my god.
So yeah, I'm like the only reason it immediately flagged to me like you're telling me this in the context of a story in this time to say like, yeah, that's gonna come back around.
Okay,
in a way
I
that
gotcha.
is
Right.
bad.
Okay,
Yeah,
I get it.
flags, right? It flags.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that he's not. That he is like he's presented as like, no, I have to go like I got to
work.
go do this job.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like, okay, now I know things about both of them, and in both cases, like because I know things about them in a horror movie.
Yeah.
these are the things that are going to lead to bad outcomes.
Yeah. Well, and I guess my question is like, my questions about this movie are like, what does it say that we're doing this thing in this day and age, right? Like why are we dredging up these Victorian concerns about female sexuality in a film that came out 2024, right? And I legitimately don't. I wonder what you all think about that.
We talked in the other episode about like what is vampirism a metaphor for at any given time, and like I don't know with this movie that I can answer that.
Yeah.
Yeah, same.
Okay.
I feel the same way. I don't know.
And like I'm not trying to say like, oh well, all monsters have to be a one-to-one metaphor for something.
No.
But I don't have a clear answer for your question of why this movie, because I kind of don't know what Orlok is supposed to
be.
Like, who is he representing?
yeah. In a way that like
Yeah.
with a lot of vampire movies, you can be like, oh, the vampires are AIDS.
Right.
Where or the vampires are capitalism.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about class stuff, but like particularly in Dracula, like there's a lot of class stuff going on. There's a lot of the
definitely.
fact that he is a count
Right.
really matters.
Right.
And obviously like that kind of transfers to Nosferatu, but like do you ever feel like that guy's really like swank in the way that Bela Lugosi is swank?
No,
Like-
but he does say, "Call me Lord," right?
Oh,
There's
I loved that.
Yeah.
And his whole
That is maybe the horniest moment in this movie.
The way
Yeah.
he says
It's
it.
like,
like,
call me Lord. Call me Lord.
Call me in the order of that my
Yeah.
title
No, that was-
deserves or some bullshit
Yeah,
like that.
that was fucking hot.
It's pretty dope actually. Yeah, gangsta.
I was kind of like, okay.
You're like, I would call you Lord.
yes, Lordy. So we're kind of finding that there's like no, or at least to us, that we can't really seem to think of a reason why we're pulling on these like Victorian fears of female sexuality, you know, in this day and age. Like doesn't seem to be saying anything particularly
Doesn't seem to be saying anything
concrete
about female sexuality.
right.
Like,
Yeah.
am I wrong? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't see it saying anything about female sexuality actually in the end, except other than it is to serve men.
Yeah, I'm
But
not
even then,
sure-
that
I'm
doesn't
not
do
even
that.
sure it's saying that.
I know.
I don't think it's saying that.
I'm reaching.
Yeah.
I don't agree with what I just said, but I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
I'm not.
It's interesting. It's you know, maybe it's a product of just Eggers, again, his like fixation on perfectly or beautifully remaking this film, that, you know, the questions that the original film and its source materials raise don't strike us in a particularly relevant way. I don't know.
Yeah, it's odd, and I think part of the issue is bringing some of the Stoker stuff back in,
Yeah.
and bringing these elements of female sexuality in without having anything to say about them.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I do kind of think like The Witch is clearer on
Oh,
what
yeah.
it's saying.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
I worried when I got out of this and like had arrived at the point where I'm like, ultimately I did not like this movie
Yeah.
on a lot of points, and I'm like, does this mean that I have to go back and rewatch
Have you
The
seen
Witch?
his other movies?
Yeah, I've seen all of his movies,
Okay.
and liked all of them, and visually I like this movie a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Although I will say, like, we did already have a visually weird interpretation of this story, which is Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is, if you have not gone back to it recently, it's fucking wild. It's, like, as a thing to look at, is really like.
And it's all practical effects.
It's
too.
all practical effects,
Yep.
and then you like I remember seeing it in the theater and just being like, "What the crap is this?" It's so good. It's so you know, it's a messy film in a lot of ways, but it's
Nice.
visually it's unimpeachable. But I particularly The Witch, which I really liked. I was like, is this kind of attitude there already? Like, is this just his thing?
Yeah.
He's just like. And it's not.
It's not,
I think
yeah.
it's much more thoughtful about
Yeah.
similar concepts.
Yeah.
And which makes this movie even stranger to me.
Yeah.
I think I feel like because we're kind of like hitting roadblocks in a way, and I feel like part of the problem is I think he liked this movie, the original. I think his big thing, more than like ideas or getting to an analytical place, is like historical accuracy. Like that is what he likes.
Okay, yeah.
But I do think that's interesting, but also part of the problem because it
Yes.
doesn't end up saying anything. It's more of an homage, and it's more of a new interpretation, like a new visual
So-
interpretation.
Yeah. So can we talk for a minute about Eggers as a filmmaker?
As a director, please.
Yeah.
Yes, let's
So
go.
I like his films. I've never been like overwhelmingly floored by them. I think
Gotcha.
I like them because they are doing things that I like. That comes from the fact that like he and I have probably seen a lot of the same films, and he wears a lot of his influences on the sleeve. And I don't know, and one of them is certainly Herzog, certainly Werner Herzog, and I don't know that he advances the ideas of some of those so much as he like replicates or remixes them.
Interesting.
I do wonder with this film if the expectation is that like my audience hasn't seen Werner Herzog's Nosferatu.
It's interesting though, because I've seen Werner Herzog's, and it's fine.
It's fine.
I don't think it's great. I'm so sorry.
Great is
I
certainly
apologize.
not the word. No, it's fascinating.
I think that Robert Eggers was like, okay, I've seen those two. Now I want to make my gothic, visually like ethereal version of it. Because I also feel like instead of him just making Dracula, which he clearly also loves, he was like, ooh, what's more obscure? Nosferatu.
Yeah. I mean, he's clearly seen Bram Stoker's
Oh,
Dracula.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, and he's also probably read it because, like, he's pulling things from, like, both of them. But I feel like, I don't know. I loved The Witch. I loved The Lighthouse.
That's my favorite.
Right, mine too. I thought it was so original. I didn't really like the Viking movie, The Northman, but I don't love Viking stuff. I don't like high fantasy. So for someone else, it's great.
The Witch is a top 5 horror movie for me.
Oh.
Like I absolutely love it. Yeah. I have
It's a
not
top
seen...
5 goat-themed movie for me.
Definitely, for
I would
sure.
say top 3, in fact, of, like, movies that center around a goat.
Definitely. I was really advocating when my friend Aaron was his wife was pregnant with their kid. I was really advocating for them to name it Black Phillip.
Oh,
But
my
that didn't pan
God.
out.
I could see where that would be problematic.
Yeah, I could see if you were
I
like...
don't know your friends or their demographic background, but there's probably no...
Is it Aaron from Skinamarink?
Yeah, Aaron,
Yeah,
Aaron,
that would be not great.
No. He rightly chose not to.
Oh, my God.
He named his kid Liette after Liette Keynes from Dune. So that's pretty dope, actually. Anyway, sorry.
We are all over the place.
All over the map. I wonder if
But
we
again,
could...
Dune, I feel like, is not being covered in a podcast space. I don't
That's
think-
another
I don't
idea.
think people are out there talking
Another
about
one.
it.
Check it off, guys.
No, this one we're keeping this
Your
idea.
IP.
Oh.
We're going to start the world's first Dune
Ooh,
podcast.
we could talk about the David Lynch one.
Yes, definitely.
All day.
That. I wonder if we could talk a little bit about the visual choices of this movie, right? So yeah, if we kind of assume that Robert Eggers is like just going in there to, remake this beloved film that he holds in his heart, and he's not necessarily worried about adapting the messaging or really changing it too much terribly in ways that strike us as meaningful. I feel like what he is bringing to it is, just a visual aesthetic. He's like, he's trying to, he's making it very beautiful, right? And something that I noticed in my second watch is just the overwhelming, like, emphasis of, like, symmetry in a lot of the shots. The framing, do y'all have anything to say about any of that? Like, what do you feel is...
I do.
Yeah, please.
So I think this is not a lazy answer, I promise you. I do think it's an homage to the first one. Because if you watch the first one, most, if not all of the shots are centralized. And I think that he just liked it and ran with that idea and maybe thought, wouldn't it be interesting to take a movie made in the 20s that was filmed like with things very centralized and bring it to a film today where, what would it do?
So it's not a new thing he's bringing to it.
I don't
it's like,
think
it's
so.
Very, so maybe I just didn't pay
Well,
enough
it's
attention
the
for
return
22.
of the repressed. I mean, it's a weird thing because, like, with Murnau, it's the language of film is still being created, right? So, like, what else would you do? You wouldn't do asymmetrical shot composition. You want your actor's face, like, fully, with weird makeup and right in the center frame. And it becomes striking again 100 years later to do that. I mean, that Lighthouse is very similar.
Yes,
and that has a weird aspect ratio too, doesn't it?
It does. Well,
Okay, I couldn't...
it does. I watched it recently for most of the movie, and then at one point, and I don't remember, it's towards the end, it goes to like full.
It goes to full,
screen.
yeah,
I don't remember
okay.
the number ratio, but yeah, it changes.
Yeah, I remember kind of hoping that he would do that again.
Yes, it would have been interesting.
And then,
yeah.
like, a couple of months ago, I saw Nickel Boys, which does that smaller ratio, the sort of more square ratio. And it's like, it can be really effective.
Yes, because it makes you frame things in a different way, and like Yeah, it would have been interesting to see what he would have done.
I do, as much as I'm kind of bashing on it, there's a lot I really liked about this. And like the use of close-up, I think, is really strong throughout.
Yeah.
And it has this weird effect of like, I am going to say like, nobody is particularly sexy in this movie.
Yeah. Is that an effect, though? Or is that a failure? I don't know.
Harry just wants... Usually Harry doesn't want sexy people in the movies.
Okay.
But now you want more
I
sexy.
don't not want sexy. What are you talking about? I'm sorry.
But I was just like, I was really struck. And that, like, on a first viewing too, I'm like, nobody is hot in this movie. And I think it's partly like, it is that sort of like high resolution close up work.
Interesting.
Where you're like, oh, Nicholas Hoult, you're so sweaty.
Yeah.
And not like good sweaty, like flop
Not
sweaty.
yeah.
I mean,
and I'm
Lily
not.
Rose Depp is pretty sweaty a lot, too. There's a lot of sweat, actually.
Yeah.
Sexy. There's a real failure of sexiness in this movie.
Yeah.
Did anybody have any ideas you want to wrap up with that idea?
I do.
Yeah.
With visuals. Because thinking of centralized shots, I was also thinking of him playing with color. And so, like, most of the film is that kind of, like, bluish, cold color tinted, kind of black and grayish vibe. But then it's also, like, these very warm colors. Like, it's almost like fire and ice. Like, what... As I was watching it, I was trying to be like, okay, well, do the colors mean anything?
Yeah.
Like when it's like cooler colors, is something is X happening, and when it's warmer colors, is this happening? Yeah. And I found it kind of frustrating because it felt like it should be important, but the emotions or the narrative, while those things were going back and forth, didn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Like, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I totally hear that, and I love the idea of the like color binaries in this movie, because I was also thinking of this movie in like very binary terms as well. Like, there's a real emphasis on Ellen being like a spiritual being, while her husband Hutter is like very like earthly and like focused on like so like Knock calls Ellen a sylph. Nosferatu says that Ellen is not of this world.
Not of this
Friedrich
world.
refers to her fairy ways. So like Ellen is like she's like a spiritual being, but meanwhile Hutter is like in pursuit of financial reward, and he's promised to be made a part of the quote unquote firm. You know, he's just like very much of this earth, right? He's all about financial reward, the here and the now. And so I was thinking about binaries in that way too. Not that I previewing my critique, not that I feel like there's necessarily anything conclusive about those things, but I did wonder if there was something kind of about binaries in this movie. And then part of me wanted to extrapolate this idea to this American filmmaker who chose to tell this story, and thinking about binaries in America and all the different ways that can be represented. And ultimately my like explorations again felt a little fruitless, but like I wondered if maybe there was not something more allegorical going on in this movie, and it might just be my own desperation at wanting this fucking movie to mean something.
Yeah.
But like,
So, can I ask a weird question? Did
Yeah.
either of you, before this came out, think that this movie was going to be in black and white, or is that just me?
No, because I'd seen the trailer.
yeah, I did not think that. No.
I think even after seeing the trailer, there was some part of my brain that was like, "Oh, he's doing another black and white film," because there is that sort of stark. Because I think basically everything that's in the trailer is in that cold register that you're talking about.
It is, yeah.
And the really where you get that pop of warmth, there's a little bit when they go to before Hutter leaves, when they go to the friend's house.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
There you have this other model of like sexuality within a marriage where like they're churning out kids.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And there's talk about like, oh, you're like an old,
You're a goat.
You're a goat. Yeah. Like, and even that I was like, that's something's going on there. But like, that's clearly meant to sort of say like, oh yeah, but Hutter's not like he's and then the other really warm scene is the dinner scene with Orlok, where it's all and it's all sort of firelit and which, as I recall, like, not to keep comparing it to the Coppola, all that stuff in Coppola is in that colder registers in
Yeah.
that sort of
Yes,
gray
it is, yeah.
with him in red robes that really pop. But the setting is really cold. Whereas like when he gets to that room, I'm like, this seems really kind of nice.
It looks kinda
you've been
cozy.
you've been on this long walk.
Yeah.
And but on the Ellen as a spiritual being, like that to me feels like a misreading by everybody that says it. Like
That the idea of Ellen being a spiritual being?
yeah, because in fact she's really grounded in her sexuality in a way that, you know, like that sort of like, oh, she's a sylph, she's a fairy. There's something desexualizing about that. And even when Orlok says it, it's weird because that sort of pairs those two things, that he is there to sort of acquire her sexually and is saying, you're not for the mortal world. Sorry.
So good.
Like what is the only, you know, because he's the thing that's exterior to that world, it is really still just a sexual claim. So it's not, it doesn't seem like it places her back in this sort of spiritual realm.
But she spends the whole movie though, like in a you know, in a trance, in a interworld haze.
But I don't know. There's something very bodily about the character. Even like the moment when
And the acting, too.
Like when the doctor's like, put her in a corset, it'll help.
Oh yeah, and they're like, she has too much blood, and I was like, oh,
the too
that's
much blood
wrong.
stuff is yeah.
Well, that's
I mean, that's what they
But that's
did.
what they would have
That's
thought.
what they did.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I was like, oh,
That's interesting.
Yeah, because that's a weird place where, like, you know, like pre-modern medicine and the metaphors of the movie, like, because she's engorged whenever he, like, sucks off her husband. Like, those are the like,
yes.
which is at that point I'm still like all in on this movie. By the way, like
It
it's
feels
really
kind of like voyeuristic or something, or there's like a threesome. Not, you know what I mean, like a spiritual threesome.
Because like there is in all of these versions there's a sexual relationship between the Dracula and the Dracula Orlok and Harker Hutter, right? Like the you know, keep going back to the Bram Stoker Dracula, like there's the moment in the Bram Stoker Dracula where the three vampire ladies go after Keanu Reeves and Gary Oldman shows up and he's like, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
And it's not because they're his wives, it's Jonathan is his wife.
Right.
Like, he's like, no, nobody's fucking this guy but me.
But me, yeah.
And so like that, and like when Orlok is feeding on Hutter in this, it's very, very sexual, very like rapey.
Yeah.
And she's responding to it. You know, we're cutting to her having having sexual responses to it.
Right.
And so then when they're like, she's got too much blood, I'm like, well, yeah, she like, there's that connection there, and like this is how it resonates physically.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are all, and again, at this point, I'm still like, no,
You're still in.
kind of rocks, yeah.
But then it turns for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it could have gone a different way up until the ending for me. Because I didn't know, like, I was like, I know how Nosferatu ends, and when all these themes of sexuality are put in, I'm like, if this lands at the same ending, it's going to be actually, like, worse in my mind than the Murnau version, because you've built in a sort of culpability for Ellen.
Interesting.
Because it's not just, you know, with the Murnau, it's just like, oh, well, the virgin has to sacrifice herself. And this, it's not virginal, and there is, like, she's quote unquote asked for it.
Yeah. No, that's
so there's,
interesting.
and like, and I was just like,
Totally.
not sitting well.
It feels like we should we transition
I think we should transition
to critique?
Let's do it.
Oh,
Let's go to
okay,
Had
critique.
we not? Was I not doing that? Sorry.
Bob, you got a number?
I hate the doing numbers on things because I don't want to give a 1-star Amazon review, but it's like a 5 or a 6 for me.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot that I like. There's a lot that's cool to look at.
Yeah.
And then just like it just falls apart for me, and those pieces land in bad places.
Yeah. So tell me about that. Some of those.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of the stuff that we've talked about of like, it feels like a lot of stuff on the narrative side was not thought through. And it does end up being a mix of Nosferatu and Dracula, like pulling stuff back in, but then not really following through on the thoughts behind that.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I said, the two films that I really am like comparing it to in my head a lot are actually not the other versions of Nosferatu, but they're Bram Stoker's Dracula and The Exorcist, which I think have both given a lot of thought to similar ideas, and it's not always great where they land. Like there are issues with both of those films, and there's like, you know, certainly like having rewatched Bram Stoker's Dracula recently, you get to the end, you're like, that's where you're landing with this. Where it's like, she's fated, she's destined to be with him, but also has agency, sort of. But like there's like, you can see a thought process behind it in the writing, and this, it's just like, when you made the person say that, did you think about what that meant to a modern audience? And like we said, I tried in my head to lock it into periodic like fidelity. Like, oh no, he's trying to be true to like what would have been true for the characters, and I couldn't get my brain to do that work. So I think it doesn't entirely fail, because I think it's fascinating. And certainly on a rewatch, I was like, oh no, this is still really interesting. But also kind of bad. Yeah.
No, I'm with you. With periodic fidelity, I feel like to some extent that's cool and is interesting to me. But
it's cool in his other films.
Yeah. But I also don't like it. Just
you can say it.
It doesn't serve this movie the way it serves his other movies, right? It doesn't serve this movie the way it serves The Witch, right? Where it's like, oh, here's this like very, you know, patriarchal, religious time and place, and here's how a young girl's budding sexuality is regarded by the people
functions
around her.
Within that
and
system.
Yeah, exactly. And but they don't really do enough with that in this movie. Like they do the frustrating thing in this movie where they flirt with ideas, they flirt with things, and then to me they don't really bring anything across in a meaningful way to me, other than that's just, look, I'm just making a very faithful adaptation of Nosferatu and Dracula to some extent. And the part for this movie that really a little bit broke my heart. Like, I was really ready to like love this movie until we had the part where Nosferatu brings the plague over, and we have that scene of Von Franz and Sievers in the hospital, and they're just covered in dead bodies, and they're like, we just don't have any more beds. And my brain is like, fuck, like, we all just lived through that, and like, what if this is like an awesome way to like address some of that shit? And they just don't. They just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Maybe, I think my rating for this movie comes down to a little bit, which is a thing that I often criticize in other people. It's just not what I wanted, you know?
Yeah.
But it really just wasn't what I wanted. I wanted a reason to think that this old story from 1922 has implications for the modern day, and I just don't think that Robert Eggers showed it to us. And so I will give this a 7, because I do think that a lot of it is beautiful, just beautiful imagery. But the rest, I mean, I wanted it to be a 10. I thought this could be a 10.
I mean, I didn't bring it up, but that like, I had that same moment of like, oh, are we going to get the great post-COVID vampire.
Yes, I thought that too.
Exactly.
Because that sort of concept of vampirism as contagion, and wow, it is not that.
It is not.
It's not.
There's like that glimmer,
but
like you
but
said,
they
no.
frustratingly flirt with it,
Yes.
and then don't. You know that hurts.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I'm going to fall in a very similar place as you guys. I think visually stunning.
Yeah.
Love the visuals. That fucking, regardless of what it's saying, the ending with him on top of her and his like fucking skin and like his bones, the way his eyes bleed in the sun, fucking stunning.
Yeah.
I loved the visual of that ending. I was like, this visual is great. But I was disappointed with the Northman, and I was worried about this because the witch and Lighthouse. I was like, something with an L. Were both more independent, and I think that they were better. I don't know if having a bigger budget is worse for him, because I felt like, and I also worried. I was like, okay, is he just visuals now? Is that all we're at, and he's just focusing on the historical aspect? Like, I liked the design of Nosferatu. I wasn't sure at first because all I saw was mustache, and then I was like, no, I kind of like a new interpretation. I would have liked to have seen some
I don't want him to like be the same like rat, as before.
No,
sure.
well, no, but like I was like, I've never seen a Dracula or with like full on like mustache.
Well, I mean,
Big fucking mustache.
Gary Oldman's got some stash.
You can still
going
see
on.
his fangs.
Yeah.
This one was
That thing is a broom.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
No,
It's intense.
yeah, and to go with something that is, I mean, so prosthetic.
Yeah.
Which brings it back to the Murnau movie, and where you can't really see Max Schreck.
No, you can't see. Which
in that
I
performance.
liked the design, but I also wanted a little more Bill Skarsgård in it because he has such an unusual face, and I thought maybe his weird bug eyes would be a good choice.
The sunken eyes of a Skarsgård.
Yeah, something in there. I thought but my thing
That's
is
my favorite album,
with,
Bisexual Darkness. By the way. I really like it's a strong
God.
sophomore effort. Sunken Eyes of a Skarsgård.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
But I feel like with all Nosferatu and Dracula movies, it is just a movie about a vampire buying a house. I don't get it's it's like a vampire realtor movie, and I don't care. They're too long. I'm not a person who loves movies with horses and carriages and like fucking Victorian things. Like it's just, I'm bored. And I know that sounds kind of simplistic and whatever, but I also don't love that like there's one, okay, yeah, you could argue there's more than one woman, but please, the friend barely does anything. We could have seen a little bit more lesbian action, like a little more kissing between them. We were so close. And children don't count. So I don't want a movie that is mostly men. Like the majority of the Dracula Nosferatu movies are like boys having an adventure. And I'm like, who the fuck cares? It doesn't quite fit into horror for me because of this. It's more gothic Victorian action. And so I have no desire to ever watch these movies. I will probably not watch it again unless it's with people who have never seen it and they want to watch it. But I really liked a lot of the visuals. I want to give it a higher rating because of the visuals, but I'm going to give it a 5.5.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too.
Yeah, I'm wondering if maybe I shot too high with 7, but like because we're praising all three of us have praised the visuals of this movie. But there's a side of me too that finds the visuals masturbatory, and like it's just like a little bit like, it's one of those films that's like, look at my beautiful shots.
Look at my beautiful.
Yes, do it.
Look at my beautiful shots. Shots. And without, without more narrative oomph behind it, that's what it kind of boils down to. How moved are you by this beautiful framing that he uses, or these colors, or all of this? Like that's I think what kind of the rating of this movie comes down to.
Yeah, really interested in the idea of being generally bored by Dracula movies, and the fact that they are like every version of this is at least 30% a real estate deal.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 These generally are not anybody's favorite vampire movies.
No.
Like
Yeah,
try to
so
think.
true.
You know, I'm not like
Even fucking Twilight fans are like, sorry.
no. But
Harry, are you
if
revealing
ask
yourself
somebody,
as well?
you know, like, what's your favorite? Nobody's I can't think of anybody who's like, oh yeah, it's the Bela Lugosi Dracula.
No.
And that one has armadillos.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen that one.
It's like 40 minutes long.
Oh, then I could watch
really
that.
short. But there's like random shots of like his castle is full of animals, and at one point there's just like armadillos crawling out from under the stairwell.
Fucking dope.
And it's the worst special effects. It's really just like a bat on a string.
Oh, I love that. Yes.
It's a very, and that performance is so bizarre and over the top. Bela Lugosi. But yeah, like people are like, oh, The Hunger because of this, or like Near Dark, or Let the Right One In, like things that are taking that metaphor and doing something cool with it. Whereas, yeah, I agree. Like, I went, I for this podcast watched all 3 Nosferatus. I watched the Dracula from 34. I watched is it 34? I don't know. The Bela Lugosi Dracula, the Christopher Lee Horror of Dracula.
Oh, wow.
Which is super fun. I mean, that's got Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, so what's not to like? But it's the same story. And the Bram Stoker, which I think is now maybe my favorite Draculas. But the ones that I was like really into, were ones that are different. Like Girl Walks Home Alone at Night.
I love that one.
Yes.
What was the is it Babylonia?
I am a big fan of Let the Right One In.
I love
Let the
Let
Right One In.
In.
That's great.
Yeah.
Kronos is really good by Del
Have you
Toro.
Transfiguration. It's like a
A friend of mine is the editor on that. I love that movie. Yeah,
I love that movie.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I couldn't find it because I couldn't quite remember the name of it. It's like the Changeling. No, it's not the Changeling. That's Angelina Jolie or something. But yeah, ultimately, I didn't get around to watch it. Yeah, I loved that movie.
But you're right. Like those are all vampire movies where the vampire is still kind of like a metaphor for something. Like it's using that narrative to do. I don't know.
To do something.
Something
It's just-
interesting. Yeah.
I can't figure out what doesn't work about this one. About 24.
Yeah,
Like-
I think it's kind of half baked. I
Yeah.
think like writers are cheap is the thing. Like movies are expensive, writers are cheap, and it's the one thing that like this needed another pass on at a script level. I think.
Did he write it, or
I
was it a different
think
writer?
that he did, but I might be wrong. I think that's part of his. I think he's one of those guys, right?
That writes and directs.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I feel too.
So one of my favorite horror film podcasts, called The Faculty of Horror, one of their complaints about this movie was that it felt, yes, it is written by Robert Eggers.
Okay.
It felt, they were concerned that Robert Eggers is becoming a filmmaker who people are not editing anymore. And who nobody is kind of pushing back against anymore, which, some creatives need that, right? Some creative people need someone to kind of be like, no, this doesn't make sense, or like, what are you really saying here? Or,
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to be careful because like it's a well-edited film, like in the sense
It
of
is.
being cut.
sure.
It looks good, but yeah, like it does feel like nobody sat down and gave notes.
But that's
It
what
was
I'm
like,
saying
Bobby,
right there. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Bobby, what are we saying about teenage horniness here?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's what I mean at a script level is like,
Yeah.
that's where and that's just from who I am. Like that's where I see something didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like this shouldn't have been shot off the script that it.
Right.
The problems for me are largely at a script level.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
I hear
yeah.
that for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Because, like, visually, like we've all said, is great. And I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about Lily Rose Depp's acting, but I thought she was fantastic. Interesting.
Who is the worst performer?
I think
Because I am, God love him, I'm
Hutton?
going with Willem Dafoe.
I'm going with Hutton. What's his name?
Oh,
Hutter.
Nicholas
Hutter.
Hoult?
Yeah, Nicholas Hoult. I don't think he was. I think he's a good actor. I don't think
yeah,
he was right for the role.
He's not great in this. And
No,
I like
he's
him in most things. I'm like, oh yeah, like if Nicholas Hoult is in something, I'm like, okay, that tweaks things up a little bit. I think
Yeah.
he's very competent and nobody's really found the way to make him like a leading man. I think The Great is maybe the closest that anybody is really using him in a way that I thought it was really good, because he's very funny in a very, very specific tone. Like, he's very funny in The Menu.
Oh yeah, he was good in that.
But the Harker is a bad role.
It is.
Yeah.
And
It
like,
is.
Keanu's not good in that role. But now that we're like through the Keanussance and like we're reclaiming even like what were the
Keanus.
quote unquote bad Keanus, I'm like, oh, it's not entirely his fault.
No.
Like, there's just nothing. It's a very passive character.
Oh, I know where the bastard sleeps. What were we just talking about? Who's the worst actor? I don't think it's Lily Rose Depp's fault either. I don't think that she's the worst actor. Actually, I think she does some amazing things in this movie. I think that she shows an incredible physicality in this movie that is convincing to me. I also, though, think that when your character has to be at 10 for the entire movie, you don't get to show any depth, really.
Yeah.
I mean, none of us are saying are labeling her as the
worst.
Yeah, not at all.
You think it's Willem Dafoe?
I think Dafoe is having a great time.
Yeah.
And is like the script is too much. Like he's being asked to say things that are absolutely absurd. Yeah.
Like that when he first introduces himself and he's like muttering something and he's like, "Oh, my friend!" Like he's just like a jolly man, like having a great time.
And it's funny because I think of like in Aquaman, which I didn't expect to reference in this podcast.
And
like
here we are.
He's really good at saying the absurd thing. They're just like, let's bring Willem Dafoe in to talk about like a trident or something, and Willem Dafoe's there in scales and he's talking about a trident, and I'm like, oh, you're killing it, Willem.
Yeah.
I did not know he was in Aquaman. What?
It's not. I'm not suggesting that you go back and rewatch Aquaman for the Willem Dafoe
I've never
of it all.
seen Aquaman.
It's fine. But yeah, this like he's given a lot of exposition to deal with. Yeah. And also like he's in this weird emotive tone, and that's again maybe just a part that is weird because like Hopkins in Bram Stoker is absolutely chewing scenery as Van Helsing. So I don't know that I've seen a good portrayal of that part,
as Van Helsing. Yeah, and the part in the 1922 Dracula is essentially non-existent. It's like weirdly there's there's not really. I mean, he's in it, but it's like he's weirdly inconsequential on the story and only in a few scenes.
Does he just come in and say like, well, you just have to let the virgin sacrifice?
And essentially, yeah. So
isn't there
it's
like a scene
weird
of him with Venus flytraps or something?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah. I've seen him with Venus flytraps, and then I want to say he comes in like at the very end after Ellen has sacrificed herself to Nosferatu, and it's just like, "Yep, told you so."
Yes,
and like that's it. Like,
those visuals in the Murnau are really cool. I forgot about those, but all the sciencey stuff, and but then here it's like the Defoe character. It's sort of it's more alchemical than like
Well, he rejects science, right? He's a weird. He like used to be in the scientific world, and then he like dipped over into the occult, and even has a big monologue about how science is actually blinding us, which also sat sour with me as like a modern viewer too. And like,
but he does. I think his first line is something about like, "This will not turn my black sulfur into gold," and like, so there is like that sort of alchemical stuff and Paracelsus. And like, I don't know. I thought he was goofy in this.
Should we rate the hottest?
Oh, who's the hottest?
Yeah. In a movie with no hot people.
In a sexy, in a quote unquote sexy movie that is not sexy.
This is a hard one.
I have an answer.
What is it?
Answer. My answer is Nosferatu's mustache.
Yeah, no, that's the I was going to go with the same thing.
That thing is just...
Just the mustache, though? Nothing else?
No, just the mustache. I mean, he's pretty cut, too. When he comes out of that coffin, I mean, he's like half dead and rotted away, and that's pretty gross, but... I mean, he's
jacked.
But he could get it.
Man.
He could get it.
Like, damn. Yeah.
Are you both picking?
So I'm going for Nosferatu's mustache. I would take that. That's the kind of mustache that gives me envy. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, it's not, because it's not Orlok altogether, but it is some. I think it's the call me Lord thing. Like,
Yeah.
When it is the like that kind of domination rather than the kind that he tries to assert over Ellen. I'm like, that like calling in class and age and the deep basso of your voice. That fucking rules.
Yep.
And I think the mustache is like the like physical version. Like that mustache on its own says "Call me Lord."
Totally. Yeah.
Like the issue. Like there's probably that moment where he's like, "Why do I even have to tell you this?" Like, observe mustache.
Look at this mustache. Right. Yeah.
Just points to
like
it.
It actually. You can't see, but around the edge it curls into the letters "Call me Lord." Like Raleigh Fingers style.
Oh my god!
But in whatever language he says, like you do not know, but the shape of my mustache says "Call me Lord."
Oh my god!
Well, Jen, what do you think?
I'm really, really, really struggling this episode. Usually, I'm like,
It's not a hot
I know who it is.
movie.
It's not, and that going back to one of my favorite horror podcasts, The Faculty of Horror, is another critique of theirs, which is that it's like it's not sexy. It's like all the sexiness is it's forced. It's sexual, but it's not sexy.
Yeah, it's about
right?
sex,
like it's,
but not sexy.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have to pick something. I have to
You
pick.
do.
I do have to.
You
I
literally
do.
you have to. Pick
I have
something.
to. I have to. I mean, her friend was kind of hot. She was fine, but I mean, it's the closest to what I would bang in the movie.
I would almost say, like, in terms of like actual physical hotness and not being a mustache, the other doctor, the Sievers.
Oh, dude,
that dude's
that
kinda
dude and
hot.
his fucking voice.
Yeah.
Wait,
Yes,
which
that
one
actor.
is he?
The doctor that they go to that hooks them up with Willem Dafoe.
Yeah,
I don't
That guy's
remember what he
kinda hot.
looks
He's in the
like.
Witch. He's in the Witch.
Is he the dad?
Yes, he's the
Yeah, he's the
dad.
dad
He's
in
the
The Witch.
dad.
Yeah, and he's
because he
not
has
hot
that
in that. He's
voice.
kind of hot in this.
His name is Ralph Ineson.
Okay, that's a hot name.
It
is,
Like,
it is.
for a Ralph name, that's
Yeah.
really hot.
And his
Like, that
voice
really,
is
Innocent
so...
really turns it around.
Yeah, he has
Yeah.
a great voice.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would say
that's
in
a
terms
great-
of like who is
Yeah.
actually like physically hot.
No,
in this,
yeah.
I think it might.
And
be
it might be
It might
him.
be Mr. Ralph Innocent, Lord Ralph Innocent.
Just put Lord in front of anyone. It makes
Yeah.
them hotter.
Yeah, I think so. Or you do that to acknowledge hotness.
Oh yeah, you'd be like,
Like rather than say like the fuckable Ralph Innocent, you say Lord. Yeah.
I think we should normalize the fuckable as a title, though. For sure.
yeah.
The honorable fuckable Ralph Innocent.
That might be the new name instead of hottest.
Yeah. Oh,
Most fuckable.
most
Well,
fuckable.
well, no.
Sure.
I think it's important to acknowledge that those can be separate things.
They can
Sure,
be
I'm
separate
into that,
things.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it's like that game, Marry, Fuck, Kill.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Correct. Correct.
Obviously, Orlok has the hottest voice. Let's just be clear about that.
Ooh.
Oh, maybe I should go with him because of the voice. You
And
went
the
with him because
breathing,
of the
though?
mustache. I did like the breathing.
That
There was-
tortured.
There was one
laborious
moment though
breathing.
where he's speaking in Orlokian or whatever language he's supposed to be speaking, and it's like the subtitles and what he was. It's I can't remember if it's like you belong to me alone or like only me, but what he's saying sounds like one and the translation is the other. So I think it's like you are mine alone, and he's saying like only mine. Like it's like a weird cognate.
Yeah. Weird.
But it bothered me. It felt like one of those things. I'm like, you guys didn't pick a language, did you? Like this is like
Right.
It's like Eastern European Klingon. He's speaking Dothraki.
Yeah. So another game we like to play is Armchair Filmmaker. This is where you get to pick one change to this film for maximum effect. It can be realistic. It can be totally goofy. It can be outside the laws of physics and reality. Whatever you want. But what is one change you would make to this film? We could take a moment and think about that if you want.
Oh, I know.
Oh,
immediately.
then jump
And
right
it's-
in.
And I think the issue is it sort of makes it not a Robert Eggers movie, which is like I wanted her to live. I wanted her to trick him in some way.
Yeah.
And sort of, I don't know how much she would have to sort of deploy sexuality to do this, but like if she had lived, I walk out of this movie like possibly just like pumping my fist in the air, like this is great. But, I mean, which is again, this is how the Coppola version ends. Is she's like, no, I'm like, it's my destiny, but also I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
And I really thought, because it was leaning into the setup of landing at the ending of the Murnau movie, where she sacrifices herself, I'm like, no, like a modern filmmaker is going to turn that.
Right.
And I really do think that if he did, for me, it would have been like not just successful, but maybe like a wildly successful movie.
So that little tweak for you would have been like,
yeah, which tells you how long I was all in on this movie.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
really like to the very end, and then I was like, oh no, kind of fuck this movie.
Yeah, interesting.
Like,
that
I walked
sounds
out
really
upset.
frustrating. That's
Yeah.
a really frustrating experience. Yeah. I think I wanted this movie to play more with the post-COVID world, and I was just so titillated by that little like, I was interested in the lead up to it. I found it visually interesting. I was into it. And then we got that hospital scene, and I was like, here it is, right?
Yeah.
Like, here is why we're doing this movie. And then the next 35 minutes happened, and nothing happened with it. And it just broke my heart a little bit. So I'm not really sure how I would implement that necessarily. Again, I agree. I think it would make it not an Eggers film, because I think it would involve violating his absolute fidelity to historical accuracy and all of those things. But also without it, I'm like, what does this movie say? It says nothing. So
Okay, so I thought she was calling out for evil in the beginning.
yeah.
I think I want that. I like
I kind
that.
of want calling out for
Yeah.
evil. Yeah, I'd actually be into that too.
No,
Yeah.
So I think
I totally agree.
I watched it how I wanted it to be. So I would like that to be the change. And then I would like Robert Eggers to run with that and make more creative changes throughout the movie, rather than doing it almost a shot for shot the first half. I want to see his creative take on it, not just in the beginning and visually in the end. I want to see something interesting with her calling out to him. Yeah, that's what I think that would change that.
I have another game in mind, and that game is if you could replace any one actor in this film with Christopher Walken.
It's got to be Dafoe.
And keep the whole rest of the film the same.
Yeah, it's Dafoe.
Really?
Yeah, in a heartbeat.
That's a good choice.
I feel like I like Dafoe.
Because he
Better
would be
than
like,
Walken.
he's in it. He's like not the star, right? You don't want to overuse Christopher Walken, right? You want him to just kind of pepper in here and there.
I don't know.
Good choice.
What would this movie be, though, if Christopher Walken was Hutter?
That would be good.
I want to see
Ellen.
that movie.
I want him to be Nosferatu. I want to be the fucking vampire. I want the whole lead up scene where Hutter is walking through a dark woods and he gets to a crossroads and a mysterious carriage comes at him and seems to nearly run him over, only for him to look up and for it to be paradoxically sideways, beckoning for him to get in. And he gets in and he's transported across a bridge into a mysterious castle, and the doors open in a beautiful symmetrical shot, and right there is fucking Christopher Walken.
Oh my God.
Right? Like, come on.
So in this version, I feel like I need to get going soon, but I think like maybe this is a good place to end. Is Christopher Walken doing the accent?
No, I think he's
Just
being,
walking
he's
out.
just
Okay.
being
Walken?
Christopher.
He's just okay.
I love it. I love it.
I want to
Yeah.
buy a house.
Correct
Who
choice,
could
yeah.
do it? Yeah, like who could
Yeah,
do
I
a
wish I
good?
could, yeah.
Oh my God.
Okay, listen. So we got to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Bob, we finish these things by having our guest perform for us a sound bite to close things out. It could be anything you want.
Mm-hmm.
Some people just make noises. Some people quote the movie. Some people quote other things.
Mm-hmm.
One person went bye bye. One person went. You pick.
Well, I gotta get back in the accent. Now I wish I had like a Christopher Walken impersonation.
Oh, it could be
I
Christopher
want to buy a
Walken.
house.
Call me Lord. Yeah, that's terrible.
Oh my god,
That's all I got.
I would take that. Yeah.
that was great.